Okay, guys, I love it when you're up here. I love it when I can see you all in one place. You might want to turn so that you can see me a little bit, unless you don't want to look at me, which I understand. But our story for today is called The Picnic Table. Okay? This story is called The Picnic Table. And it's about a cat named Norman. And Norman is a tawny bobcat big Tom with charcoal stripes that everyone agrees makes him look quite dashing. He's got a purr like distant thunder. Yeah, like that. And his fur is softer than a flannel shirt, and sinking your fingers into his coat is like falling into a bed made of feathers. And this is the story of the worst day in Norman's life, and also the best. And it begins with a truck, a moving truck. Loaded to the gills, the moving truck pulls away from the curb. Wait, where are you going? You forgot me. Let me come. I won't yowl. I won't spray. I won't even keep you up at night anymore. Just let me come. Please, take me with you. And Norman races after the spinning wheels of the truck, but even the most desperate cat is slower than a moving truck, and he is left in a cloud of fumes. His family has gone. They've left him. Accidentally? On purpose? It doesn't matter, because I am alone. And a few bedraggled days later, Norm finds his way to Decoy Park, the terrible place where everything lost and unwanted turns up sooner or later. He is hungry and he is tired. Sleeping under abandoned houses is a far cry from his purple tasseled pillow by the fire. Decoy Park itself is a sad leftover from times past, when families loaded into station wagons for Sunday afternoon picnics by this river. The park used to sound like children and the sound of clanging horseshoes, but now it just sounds like the wind. And no one goes there anymore, except people with things that they don't want anymore. Old sofas, broken shopping carts, and sometimes cats. Even cats like Norman. Skunks live there too. Lots and lots of skunks. Nobody, it seems, likes skunks in their backyards. But the day that Norman washes up in Decoy Park is a very special day. It's the kind of day you cannot ask for, the kind you can't even imagine, because on this day, this is the day that Sophia washes up at Decoy Park too. You see, Sophia was a soccer star at her old school. Everybody knew her, everybody liked her, she had lots of friends. But now she is not only stuck in a new school, where she appears to be invisible to everyone except for the bullies, but she's also stuck in a big, ugly cast. 6 weeks she has to stump around in this big cast while her ankle heals. And so every morning she stumps her way to school, clump thump, clump thump, clump thump, down the sidewalk. And every day the mean kids, the bullies, wait for her with their teasing, their pushing, and their tiny, angry eyes. And every morning Sophie tries her very best not to cry. I'm not going to cry today. I'm not. But sometimes she does. Do you ever get sad at school and want to cry? Yeah, happens to everybody. But not this morning, because this morning Sophia has decided to do something different. She stumps along in her cast on a different path, cutting through the drooping trees down by the river. No bullies today, thank you very much. And so, Sophie washes up at the Park of Unwanted Things, not 15 minutes after Norman does. There's a picnic table over by the locked-up restrooms, and her foot itching, Sophia stops to scratch under her cast with a pencil. Oh, it feels so good. But the pencil suddenly stops. Someone is watching her. She can feel it. Who do you think it is? You're right, it is. It's Norman. Norman is watching her. Forlorn and travel-stained under a bush, he looks at her with an expression at once cat unreadable and unspeakably sad. Here, kitty. Come on. Here, kitty. Are you lost? It's okay. Oh, you look so scared. You look so hungry. Here. And she gets out her bologna sandwich and she tears off a piece. It's okay. Come on, hungry cat. It's okay. And so it begins. This friendship, this epic, wonderful friendship. So it begins with a dirty cat licking bologna juice off a little girl's fingers, purring on her lap like distant thunder. But Norman has learned a thing or two about the world recently, and he will not come home with her. Not today, anyway. Who knows if he ever will? People are sometimes hard to trust. They can hurt you, he thinks. Love can hurt you. Sophie sees this in his eyes. And so Sophia comes to him every day, usually with her lunch and a big bag of cat food. For this park is full of cats, every bit as hungry and as lonely as Norman. Feral cats, her dad says disdainfully. But Sophia knows that feral is just another word for what happens when you go too long without anybody loving you. Sophia sits at that picnic table every day, and every day more and more cats come, and more skunks, who, I should point out, only stink when they're afraid. The rest of the time, they are as sweet as guinea pigs. But please, do not test this theory out at home. If you go to Decoy Park this very afternoon, you might see them there. A girl on a table covered in a quilt made of furry cats and skunks, climbing all over her. Her red ponytail moving in the breeze like Norman's tail. Lonely walkers stop in their tracks when they see them there. And the sun rises in hearts too long shadowed. Decoy Park is alive again. It's alive, a home to all who are lost and all who are in need of comfort. And so go there. Go and see for yourselves what happens when a cat that no one loves meets a girl who feels unwanted in a place that people have forgotten. Go, and you will find a gift that you have not asked for, have not earned, and maybe don't even deserve. But you will find it all the same, and your hearts will be lighter. And if any of your parents have Facebook, I can put a picture up on Facebook today of the very picnic table I saw last week that was covered with cats and skunks. They can show you the picture, okay? But in the meantime, so ends our story. Let's sing. Oh, no, we're not singing our children. With singing like we've had this morning, it doesn't really matter if I lose my voice. We can just bring them back. So it's dinner time in rural Wisconsin, and I am about 15 years old. My sister Laura is 13, and Andrea is 11. That makes 2 teens and 1 tween in one house at one time. Oh, my poor, poor parents. Time for dinner. Come on down. No answer from 3 sullenly closed doors upstairs, except for 3 different kinds of music coming out from the cracks underneath each of those 3 doors. Dinner is getting cold. Come down now. Again, no movement, no opening doors, no answer from up there. But is it my mother's imagination, or did the volume on each of those 3 stereos just increase in an effort not to hear her call? Do I need to come up there and get you? Well, that gets my attention, even over the roar of the Clash or the Sex Pistols or whatever my band of the week was, and I grimace. I am definitely not interested in family dinner, but if there's anything worse than the abhorrent ritual of eating together every single night until the end of time, apparently, it is even more worrisome, more terrible, the abhorrent invasion of my bedroom, my holy of holies, my sanctuary, my bunker, my lair, by my mother. And so 3 doors sullenly open, and 2 teens and a tween stump sullenly down the stairs. How is it that even the sound of teenage footsteps can express such profound disdain for everything? How nice of you to grace us with your presence, says my mother tartly for about the 1000th time. She sighs deeply, aggrieved, and says grace as we look down at our plates in perhaps the least prayerful way possible. And then we eat. Family dinner. I suspect I have some seriously bad teenage karma headed in my direction as my children work through these years. But you know, the funny thing about life is the way things kind of circle back like a boomerang through the years, over the decades. And this phrase, my mother's phrase, how nice of you to grace us with your presence, which she said critically, sarcastically, of course, has never left me. I mean, it's been rattling around there all these years in my head, and I don't think I've ever really considered it until very recently. I was meeting with the facilitators of our Soul Matters groups, and we're talking about the theme for this month, which is grace. And folks are sharing their own experiences of grace, and suddenly, I get it. A light bulb finally flickers on after a 30-year or so delay. Sadly, this is how it often is with me. I'm extremely slow on the uptake, but eventually, the light bulb flickers on, and I suddenly get this phrase of my mother's again, and I get it. Well, yeah, it is possible to grace people with just presence. It is possible to grace a table, a room, a community, just by really being there. I have known, I do know, tons of such people. People whose very presence at the dinner table, the office, in the classroom, here at church is like a breath of fresh air, a break in the clouds, a puff of falling autumn leaves, steam rising from a bowl of stew I had no idea I even needed until someone puts it on the table before me. Of course I know people like this. We all do. People who make a room feel like so much more than the sum of its parts. And my mom was right, as she was about so many things that I didn't realize till decades later. 15-year-old Aaron could have graced that table. I didn't need to be or do anything special to grace my family dinner. All I needed to do was just show up with something of myself, something intangible but real, as all of us can do. But I did not show up for dinner that way that night, and there are lots of times in my life, even now, where I am physically in a room, but not entirely present, not bringing my full self in a way that makes more in the room rather than less. I shoveled down my food like a teenage eating machine, but I wasn't really there. I wasn't really there. It's hard to show up sometimes. It's hard. And grace itself, this theme for the month, is very difficult to define. Of all the spiritual qualities, grace is one of the hardest to pin down, which is, I suppose, one of its chief attributes. Grace will not be boxed, reduced, labeled, caught like a butterfly, or stored up for later use. But we know it when we see it. When the wings of grace touch our cheeks, we know it. When grace knocks, it often knocks using the knuckles of another human being. So who are these people, these graceful ones? Well, we have to start by looking at grace itself, elusive as it is. Grace, simply put, is the gift dimension of life. It is the generosity dimension of life. Meeting just the right person at just the right moment, experiencing this, finding that at just the right moment, that moment where everything suddenly turns on a hinge that you never knew was there. A door opens, clouds part, your heart glows, and your world expands. This is one of the ways that you know grace is present, is if your world suddenly gets bigger, if there's suddenly more. Grace is not luck. Luck helps us get more. Grace helps us be more. Think about this. Luck helps you get more. Grace helps you be more. Grace is meaningful chance that contributes to the shaping of our destiny. Both luck and grace offer opportunity. We're given an opportunity with luck to use our material gain for good or ill. We are given an opportunity with grace to expand who we are and to advance in what we can become. The ego believes that it deserves luck. The ego believes that it deserves everything good that it gets, and of course nothing bad that it gets. The ego believes that it deserves luck and does not need grace. The higher self knows that grace is everywhere and that we always need it. Grace comes to us in the form of meaningful chance. And our response is meaningful choice. The gifts of grace are unlike any others. They are gifts that are unexpected, unearned, unasked for, and often totally undeserved. The gifts of grace fall like the rain falls on all of us beneath the burgeoning clouds, without the slightest concern for who has been naughty and who has been nice. In this way, grace is a universalist. Grace is not given because of innocence, and it is not withheld because of guilt. And thus, grace makes heaven a gift, not a reward. The graceful people in our lives grace us because they have opened themselves to this giftedness in life. The graceful people in our lives grace us because they're always wandering through lives, giving themselves away. Smiles, money, time, talent, reassurance, even tears. The graceful ones are always giving themselves away. And not because we deserve it, not because we've done a single thing to earn it, but simply because generosity flows through them like rain falls from the sky, indiscriminately nourishing everyone. These are people who have somehow moved beyond accepting grace, which is hard enough to do, and have started partnering with it. And this partnering part is important because grace is a dancer. Grace needs an active partner. Grace is not meant to do it all. It's a gift. It's a gift, but it recruits our efforts so that we can join in the enterprise. Grace does not make anything happen. It opens the door. But it's always up to us to walk through. Here's how you recognize one of grace's secret operatives. You look for 3 qualities: humility, gratitude, and perhaps most of all, this is how you'll know when you're in the presence of a graceful person. When you meet one of grace's messengers, you will not know them by the goodness that you see in them, but by the goodness that you discover in yourself. Truly graceful people don't draw very much attention to themselves, but they draw a lot of attention to the goodness of the people around them, to the potential and possibility of the people around them. Think about your lives. Think of people you have met who in their presence you feel better about yourself. You feel heard and seen and valued and trusted and affirmed. When you find yourself in the presence of such a person, you are in the presence of grace. If there is a hidden gift in a person, in a situation, or in a room, a graceful person will often have the effect of drawing it to the surface without ever drawing or desiring to draw the slightest amount of attention or credit. A servant of grace is a servant first and foremost. And I don't think I need to say how rare all of these qualities are in the social world that most of us inhabit day to day. We are a nation where success invariably means becoming a master, not a servant. Pride is our idol, not humility, which is often seen as weak self-defacement. And too much of our energy goes to build ever grander proofs. Excuse me. Too much of our energy goes to ever grander proofs of our specialness and our achievement, because we're living in a society where many of us feel like we have to prove our worthiness over and over and over again, and often we even weave faux humility into our laurel crowns like a kind of narcissistic camouflage. People who take pride in their humility are proud, not humble. Gratitude is also tricky work for us because the American myth hinges on the fiction that we are self-made, that we all pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and that we succeed or fail solely because of personal qualities, our own labor, smarts, hard work, and creativity. And let me tell you, we all have all of these things. But smarts, hard work, creativity, and even luck do not make for a rich and fulfilling life, not on their own. And so we might be happy with what we have in life and how we're turning out. The American myth encourages us to believe that we are entitled, that we are due whatever success and happiness we find, that we have earned it. And here's the problem with that. When we believe that we have earned everything that we have in life, then why be grateful? Why be grateful? For gratitude at its core is our response to the sheer generosity of life. Gratitude doesn't come from being given our due. Satisfaction may come from being given our due. Generosity comes from being somehow mysteriously given more than our due. And our intentions matter too. A lot of people in our world are living because they want to become powerful, or wealthy or secure in their own size and stature. And when you live this way, there is no need for grace. There's only need for effort and for luck. But if our purpose is to become abundantly human, to become abundantly humane, then we will feel the need for grace, for unexpected gifts, for more. We'll feel this need every day. We live in an intensely controlled and controlling society, and our myths tell us, our myths lie to us in 1,000 ways about our ability to control, to dictate, to plan, to project, and to protect ourselves in this uncertain world. And this is, in many of the ways that matter most, a complete fiction. The harder we try to button down and control life, the less open we are to the subtle promptings of grace, which always, always, always speaks softly, which always, always, always comes from the least expected people and places at the least likely moment and from the least likely direction. Planning is about the likely. Grace is about the unlikely. Wisdom is about making room for both. If we have no faith in the unexpected, we are all too likely to miss it when it comes. Or worse yet, to notice it, to see it, but to turn it down, to not believe in it because it is so unexpected, because it seems too good to be true, because it seems impossible. Hopelessness is the belief that we are all that there is, that everything depends on our own exertions, which we know deep down will always be inadequate. And despair is the denial of grace. It is the illusion of separateness that disconnects us from the resources that are always and everywhere knocking at our door. One of the most powerful things that I noticed in the meeting I had with facilitators to talk about grace is what happens when we started sharing. As we go around the circle and each person shares an experience of grace from their own lives, a meaningful and yet unasked for, unexpected, and unearned gift, that's what we're sharing about. Something amazing happened. Memories, vivid, visceral, buoyant memories of graceful experiences welled up and up and up, not just in me, but in everyone in the room. And this is how grace works. Someone asked me after the first service if I thought it was possible to generate grace outside of ourselves. And I thought about it and I said, yeah, I think the way it works is that when we receive an unexpected, unearned, meaningful gift, it does something to us. It opens us up. And when we share whatever that opening up is in the form of a gift to someone else, when we pass it on, part of us goes along with that gift of grace. And when that person shares, part of them goes along too. And so grace grows like a fountain, bubbling up and filling pitcher after pitcher after pitcher after pitcher, each of which runneth over. That's how grace grows. It grows when we give it away. It grows when we give ourselves away. Grace begets grace. And so a circle of people, a circle of individual facilitators becomes right there before our eyes a circle of giftedness, a circle of entwined hearts, a circle of grace, where we are more than the sum of our parts. And it was really easy. We didn't have to do anything hard at all. We just had to open up. So don't work too hard in your pursuit of grace. In fact, pursuing grace is pretty much the only way to guarantee that you will not find it. Grace is a dancer. She moves with such ease, and we must learn to move this way too, with that special balance of ease and effort that we see in dancers. We do what we can do, we do all we can do, and then let things play out as they may, gracefully. We are not forcing, but coaxing, not pushing, but inviting. We can and do become obsessed with effort, taxing ourselves as if our muscle were all that we have going for us. Indeed, an excessive accent on effort indicates a lack of trust in grace and in everything else as a reliable supplement to our own efforts. When we put it all into our own muscles, we're closing the door on the gifts of the unexpected. In a famous interview with Bill Moyers, Joseph Campbell said, "When you are no longer compelled by desire or by fear, when you have seen the radiance of eternity in all the forms of time, when you follow your bliss, doors will open where you would not have thought there were doors, and the world steps in and helps." It's as simple as that. It's as simple as letting the world step in and help. Yeah, that's not really simple at all, is it? This is a very difficult stance in a world as bruising as ours. But this is the stance of grace. Don't worry about where grace comes from. It's a mystery. Who cares? This is one thing I'm very jealous of my Catholic sisters and brothers about. People say, "Where does grace come from?" And they say, "I don't know." What is grace? I don't know. They have a whole file cabinet in the Catholic religion which is just labeled mystery with a capital M. They're like, "We're just glad it's there. We know it when we feel it. Where it comes from, mystery." Leave it at that. We Unitarian Universalists are not so good at mystery. But we don't really have a choice. We're not going to figure it out, folks. God? No God. Benevolent universe? No benevolent universe. Who cares? Really. What matters is that we learn to recognize and accept the gifts that life offers us. What matters is that we learn to live in a state of ever-increasing wonder and surprise, and to fill our lives with acts of unexpected, unprompted, and unasked for generosity and kindness. And so the store of grace increases in the world. Where it starts can just stay in the file cabinet labeled mystery. So when something amazing happens in your life, you can ask the question, how much of this was me? And how much of this was grace? And the only appropriate, certain answer is that expressing gratitude is a good way to go. Who knows how much is you and how much is grace? Just be grateful. Say thank you and pass it on. So if you want to become an agent of grace, just start acting like one. Pretend that you are one already. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. And besides, you will be surprised how quickly your attempts to live as if you are a messenger of grace will turn you into one for real. The most important thing is just to show up. Show up like I could have done but didn't at dinner when I was 15. Show up for the people who fill your world, and not only the people that you know and love right now, but the ones you don't, the strangers, the doubtful, the unlikely, and the strange. Do this and your life will blossom like a sunflower and burn across the heavens like a star. And I have to tell you, always tempting to leave these things out of the sermon. But I have to tell you in the name of honesty that if you're afraid that living this way as a well of generosity and trust and vulnerability, if you are thinking to yourself, that sounds like a good way to get hurt, well, you will. I promise that you will get hurt living this way from time to time, and you will be disappointed, and you will be let down, maybe frequently. But what I also want to say is that it's worth it. It's totally okay to be let down and hurt and disappointed, because if I know one thing about grace, it is this, that there is always more grace in the world, more sheer, overflowing generosity than there is disappointment. Life is abundant beyond our comprehension, but only when we say yes, only when we open our eyes to see it and open our arms to hold it. We cannot see the value of humility without a shift in focus away from the ego. And that shift in focus, that something, that shift that makes us more, that is grace. We cannot show unconditional love to everyone we meet without opening our heart in more than the usual way. And that unusual more opening up, that is grace too. We cannot see the unity of all that is. We cannot see the divine in all that happens without an interior swing, a door inside of us opening unusually wide. And that door swinging wide, that too is grace. We cannot make bodhicitta, the enlightened heart, flourish in ourselves so that we are no longer concerned only with ourselves, but with the enlightenment of all other beings. We can't just decide to do that one day. Something has to turn us in that direction. And whatever that is that helps us turn in a way that we could not have turned on our own, could not have imagined on our own. Whatever that is grace. As James Finley writes, grace rises up of the very substance of one's life, making the riddle, what will become of me if I were to surrender completely to gracefulness? What will become of me? What becomes possible if I surrender completely to this gracefulness? And what will become of me? What opportunities get lost if I do not? This sermon ends with a question, not an answer. So you know right now that your homework is set. What becomes possible for you when you say yes? What gets lost when you do not? When you say no, or not now, or I would like to read the fine print, please. Sisters and brothers, this is the question. Gracefully, gracefully, gracefully. May it be so. May it be so. May it be so. Amen. Let's take a moment of silence. Let's just take a moment, and I want to invite you to think about one person who graces your life with their presence. One person that you lean on. Thank you, graceful ones. Amen.